Hi, I'm Somer Hackley,
And I am Zen Mac, and this is the Art of Search Hiring Manager Series.
and these are stories and insights about all things hiring. Well, Zen, great to see you again. Thanks for
Hello,
being here.
Summer.
Yes. All right. Well, today I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest, Chris Cox. So, Chris is a technology and digital leader, and he's held executive roles at some of the biggest names in finance and real estate. So, he's led transformations at firms like Wells Fargo, USAA, and Bain. And now he's the chief technology and digital officer at Keller Williams. So Chris is based here in Austin, and I've been intentionally connecting with the best tech leaders in town. And I recently got to know Chris, and I was immediately impressed by how he leads, how he thinks, and his humility. So I'm excited to have him on today. So, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive in.
Well, very nice to meet you, Chris. I got one of the first questions that were just off the top of my head. Summer mentioned that you talked about the thrill of discovering someone a few layers down in your org, someone whose potential may not have been recognized yet fully. How do you spot that kind of hidden talent? Like, how do you create a culture where those people can rise and be seen?
Well, I think on the first part of your question, I think it generally happens when you're conducting some type of large scale transformation. So changing the operating model or making a big shift from a company standpoint to a new set of priorities. And it's sort of that galvanizing moment that requires you to sort of step back and think about the way you work in a different way and assessing the talent base that you have. And what I have found to your question is that when you do that, you generally as you go through the organization, if you go down several levels, you're generally going to find people that have a tremendous amount of experience and a equally tremendous amount of institutional and industry knowledge that only a portion of which is being tapped based upon the role that they're in. And it is like one of the most exciting parts of doing large scale transformations is that there is this talent unlock part that comes along with doing that work, that both allows you to find people who can contribute at a much higher level than they're being asked to in
Mm,
the organization, um, while also providing those people career paths that were never potentially available to them in a conventional sense before. And so I think that I think it's just really important when you're looking at how to realign your organization to take stock and take an audit of the talent that you have and to find the utility in that talent that may have been hidden away, partitioned,
mm,
segregated inside a very tightly defined job description. And I think in regard to the culture part, it is how do you create a culture around that? I think that in a nutshell, you make it clear that that you reward people for their level of domain expertise and their level of experience, but that you don't ask people as you assemble teams to strictly stay in their own lane. If you're the data
mm,
person, you're expected to be a full team player, and you're supposed to bring your data expertise. But if you have, a great idea on design or a new product offering or whatever, you really want to create a culture where everybody's empowered to bring their best game, and
mm,
a lot of that's going to be based upon the depth and breadth of their experience, but some of it's just going to be because you're asking them to lean in an all play type of way,
mm.
and be a contributor in totality across the organization, not just stay in the lane that is associated with whatever their extent of expertise is. And so I think finding ways to send that message and to find success examples and to celebrate that when you do
Mm.
sends a message culturally that the organization that you're building is a great place for people to come and grow their career because they're not locked in a box. And so I hope I answered your question, but that's sort of the way that I think about it. And I think it's one of those things you're on a perpetual quest um, in any organization you're in to find that utility and to unlock career paths, um, and to make sure that you do that as a matter of like a core element of your job, if that makes sense.
Mm, totally. Thank you for just even stating that, because
Mm.
oftentimes you might find organizations where there are very clear lines and crossing them is not a cultural norm. And you're advocating for the exact opposite, where you're it's all in. Everyone plays a part at various levels, at various lanes. You're doing your part in helping the organization grow.
I think so, absolutely. And the thing my teammates get tired of me saying this, but I'm a big advocate of creating an atmosphere where you're really encouraged to know more about more.
Hmm.
In other words, or learn more about more. I mean, you're encouraged to not only understand your job, but to understand your peers' job and their peers' job as well, and so that you can be a connector of dots in the organization. I think that's an undervalued skill set to understand at some level of detail so how everything fits together. And I think, at least in my experience, that works as you go down in the organization, and it works equally as well when you go upwards in an organization. So in a couple of instances in my career, we've gone to a board of directors and said, hey, listen, we're running a transformation in this company, and part of what we need for you is to lean in and know more about
Mhm.
emerging technology trends or whatever. So let us engage you in that. But in order to best support and advocate for us, we need you to lean in and know more. And I think when it's framed properly, people really, really respond to that in a positive way.
I love that. Thank you. Thinking of just leadership in general, I think there's this element of it's like best teams kind of have this ethos of servant leadership. I'm sure you've heard that term,
Yeah.
where senior people exist to serve kind of others in their organization. I I'm already getting a sense that you absolutely subscribe to that. But how do you look for that? Let's say you're building a team and you're looking for leaders in your org. Like how would you work that into your process to know that someone has that mindset?
I think there are a couple of things. I mean, servant leadership, I would argue, maybe sometimes is an overused phrase,
Hmm.
meaning it is, at least in the way I think about it, um, it's really a working model where you exist to serve those that are on your team, not vice versa.
Yeah.
You're responsible for, making sure that people have the tools and the support they need to be successful.
Hmm.
You're not waiting for everybody to report to you as a senior most executive, right? You have skin in the game and you have accountability
Yes.
to the people that you work with, and I think that ethos, that way of thinking, is really, really critical. I think in terms of the way that you spot that in people, I think you look for, and it's an intangible thing, you look for a selfless pragmatism, meaning
Mm.
selfless meaning you've got you're looking for that instinct that people may have to put other people before themselves, but coupled with pragmatism, which is I've got a job to do or a challenge to address, and I need to figure out how to do that by bringing people along across an organization. And I may not be able to just strictly rely on a grant of authority or a title that I have or something like that. I've got to bring people together and convince them to work together in a productive way. And so I think that selfless pragmatism is a big part of that. There's another phrase that I use that I think is really an important trait that you look for, which is confident humility, right? So you want somebody, and you want to find people in an organization or grow people in an organization to be both confident about their capacity to, um, to deliver on big challenges and just that inner confidence based upon experience and expertise. But you want that coupled with that humility that, you
Mm,
always have something to learn in every single interaction, and that you can't walk into a room thinking you're the smartest person in the room, because in most of the times you're not going to be.
mhm.
And so I think those two things, selfless pragmatism and confident humility, are things that you look for, and sometimes they're hard to spot, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes those two things have to be proven out over time as opposed to observed in a single instance. And so
Yeah.
what I really try to do is to find people who share that sort of sense, even if they don't use those words, that sense of commitment to team. I'm a big one on sports analogies. It's the people that are focused on the blocks or the assist, as opposed to the touchdowns or the 3-point shot. I
Mhm.
think that um, any great organizational team in business and any great sports team, very often the elements are going to be the sum of the parts, not the single star player. And
Yeah.
and and so, yeah, I think you just sort of have to you sort of have to look for that. And sometimes you're going to get it wrong, right? Sometimes
Mm.
you're going to get it wrong. But I think you have to look beyond. Sometimes you have to look a lot beyond the resume, and
Yeah.
what people have done and how long they've done it, and how much of an expert in their field they are. Those are all really important things, but those other things are equally important, particularly if you're going to lead large teams and drive significant change.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Speaking of getting it wrong or right,
Mhm.
how would you, I mean, I'm sure you've done a lot of the good and right things, and then maybe a couple that might not be entirely correct. What hiring missteps stayed with you? Like, what are some of the lessons that you can share with our listeners that really kind of landed you to where you are as a hiring leader today?
Everybody who has been a leader and a manager for a while makes hiring missteps, and I think the one that is most common, at least for me, are the ones where I've learned the greatest lessons is is hiring just on the value of the resume.
Mm,
In other words, if I'm strictly looking for somebody who checks all the boxes for my number of years worth of experience, the type of that experience, the other, where the pedigree, where they, maybe have worked for before, where they've gone to school, etc. If you're if you're strictly looking for that, it is at best a 50-50 shot whether you're going to bring in, particularly at a progressively more senior levels, if you're
mm,
going to get somebody who has those intangibles.
yeah.
And so I've certainly made that mistake. Um, and I think that, and I've made it multiple times, and I tried to learn from it each time. And I think that, it doesn't mean that you put the people necessarily through a battery of, psychological tests, but I think you talk a lot about the how you get stuff done, and you really explore that, and you spend time with candidates in multiple different settings,
Hmm.
because I think you generally, the more time I think you spend with candidates, for any role, the better sense that you're gonna get of, the full person.
Hmm.
Um, Somebody who has a greatest hits loop that they play over and over again, that you're gonna realize in the second or third interview that you're hearing the same greatest hits that you heard in the first.
Yeah.
And I think I've gotten in a rush before, and I really had to really critical need, and somebody seemed like the perfect candidate in terms of domain competencies and so forth, and ended up not being a perfect fit for the larger team, or more, or a worse situation, or sort of not culture flag carriers. They're sort of culture destroyers, right? In
Yeah.
some small way. And so I think part of it's just experience, like most things in life, there's no substitute for really doing your homework and really spending the time to get to know somebody, having a good recruiting partner that understands what you're looking for and can dimensionalize both the tangible attributes as well as the intangible attributes of a candidate, and somebody that you really trust, and who you can have some type of shorthand with that helps you sort of sift through what is a great resume and what's a great candidate.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it ties well into what Zen had asked you earlier with people being utilized to their utmost capabilities. And just, if you hire someone with that right how versus just what have you done, but how do you do it? Like they'll be able to really leverage all their skills and learn new ones and learn more and do more throughout the organization over time. So I think it all ties in together. So
I
yeah, I love
I
that.
I agree. I mean, I don't think I've ever worked at a large organization where there wasn't a time where I found somebody multiple layers down in the organization who had a tremendous amount of knowledge. Um, I'll give you a specific example. Multiple times in working with technology teams, uh, you go down into the population of people who are doing core development work, hands on keyboards, coding, and oftentimes you will find people who, because of that experience, know as much about the mechanics of the business outside of the technology that supports the business as the
Mm.
business people do, and perhaps even have better ideas around how to evolve the business because they've just thought about it in a different way, and but they've been conditioned that their career path is just, I'm going to become a developer, and then I'm going to become a manager of developers, and then maybe I move on from there. But I think the one of the big highs I get is to find people who have a tremendous amount to give but haven't been asked to give, and
Mm.
and I think if you can meet that with a level of career advocacy that deserves, then you're gonna not only are you gonna build good teams, but you're gonna be a place that people want to come work, because the quid pro quo for really strong performance is you should expect a strong level of career advocacy, a partner in your career pathing. And I'm a big believer that when you find that in any organization, you got to hold on to it. We all probably have people in our lives that sort of fit that description, that are just people that are just really good about thinking about what's next for you,
Mm.
and for others, and that are just good Sherpas of careers. And my aspiration is to be that for others as others have been for me.
Well, that is a perfect way to end this. I love
Mm.
that. Well, awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today with us. There's so many good takeaways here, and we're really glad that, yeah, you joined us.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it.